Hello! How are you? Hope you've been well. In today's video, I'm making a DIY traveler's notebook junk journal, and this video is going to be in two parts because it's very long. So this little notebook here is a personal size traveler's notebook by Eileen Hull. So you can buy the die to create these really cool like personal sized notebooks, and I wanted to make a traveler's like a junk journal that I could put in here, and I wanted it to be the size of the notebooks in there. So the paper that I wanted to use is a leftover from another project, and I think it's Maggie Holmes. So what I'm doing is just measuring to see, you know, how big I need this to be. And so I think it's 3 3/4 inches by 6 inches. So everything that I'm going to add to, like all the pages that I'm going to add to my notebook, I need to fold in half first of all. So I'm going to fold them like all these pattern papers that I kind of just grabbed from my stash that I thought would pair well together. So I folded them in half, and then I'm trimming them down to, again, 3 3/4 by 6 inches. And some of these can be smaller, like this one. You see it's not quite 6 inches in length, but I'm still going to add it in there. So again, just grabbing a bunch of paper in my stash, folding it in half, and then trimming it down, making sure it's no bigger than 3 3/4 inches by 6 inches. I've included the die, the Eileen Hull for Sizzix die, in the description just because it's such a cool die set. Because what you can do is you can cut this from fabric or leather, but the cover on the outside actual traveler's notebook is made from mat board, which you can also buy. And I'll have those linked for you below because they're so easy to make, and all you need is some elastic to kind of just thread the elastic through the little die cut holes, and then you have your traveler's notebook, and then you can make the notebooks for the insides as well, which is kind of like what I'm doing. So I'm making a junk journal insert, which is really fun, and you can also swap these with people if you would like to. They're just something really just a great way to use up the things in your stash, and it's so fun to look through as well. And then I feel like these, if you are wanting to make a traveler's notebook that's like nice and chunky quickly, then these junk journal inserts are perfect for that. Now, once I've scored and trimmed all of my pieces, and of course you can use a scoreboard for this to make sure that your creases are nice and neat. I didn't, I just folded my papers in half and then trimmed them down to make sure that they were smaller than 3 3/4 inches by 6 inches. And I also used some old planner inserts that I really wasn't doing anything with, and so I thought it was just a great way to use up those things that were kind of like forgotten in my stash. So really excited to include those, and you can see on the left there was like some hole punches along the bottom, which I'm not bothered because I could always like thread some ribbon through it and it'll work out just fine. Now the next part is we're going to open up all of our pages so that they're nice and open and flat, and I'm going to start layering these on top of each other and putting them in the order that I want them in my junk journal. So I don't want to necessarily have like a certain pattern the next page be a certain pattern. Like I kind of want it to sort of coordinate in a way to make sense, at least in my head. And so I'm just picking out my patterns, opening them up flat, and then just laying each page one on top of the other, and doing a bit of mix and matching. And if you want all of your pages to be uniform, then of course do that. But I love the different size of pages. It just makes it more fun to flip through. Like you'll be able to see a pattern behind another one. And I don't know, I just like that. It just makes your eye kind of, encourages eye movement, I guess you could say. Now, once you have your pages in the order that you want, then you want to make sure that this is flat, that all the pages line up on the crease, and then you want to add 2 binder clips on opposite ends to secure it, to make sure it doesn't move while you are sewing down the center of the crease or adding your staples with an anywhere stapler or long reach stapler, which is what I have. Now, I couldn't find any binder clips. I don't know where my binder clips went. They just disappeared. So I don't have binder clips, but I do encourage you to use them. It's so much easier to manipulate your notebook while you're trying to staple it together, or again, if you're doing it, if you're going to sew. Now here I'm going a little bit crazy, adding lots of pages because I was really excited about the different patterns and the pattern play that I was seeing, but then I realized that it was too bulky and it would have to be split up into 2 junk journals because this was just not going to, I wasn't going to be able to staple this shut. No way. Maybe if I had sewed it, it would have worked out, but I don't have a sewing machine, and yeah. So you'll see me separate this into 1. And then again, you want to make sure that the crease, everything lines up on the crease. And then since I'm using a long reach stapler, I'm going to be flipping this just flat on the outside cover. So you're going to see the outside cover on the outside, just like that. And I'm going to staple 3 times along the crease with my long reach stapler, which I absolutely love. I use this thing so much. So I'm just going to line that up. And again, you can see how helpful it would be to have an actual binder clip there. So then that way, because I'm kind of doing this, adjusting my stapler, like the length of it, I'm adjusting with one hand, and it's really hard to hold my pages, and I really needed another set of hands here or some binder clips, but you can see how having those binder clips would be so helpful. And again, I'm adding 3 staples along the crease. So 1 in the middle, 1 at the top, and 1 at the bottom of the crease. So left, right, and center. And the reason that I'm stapling from the outside, so making sure that the cover is on top, is so that the little like prongs of the staple aren't on the outside of the notebook, and then it'll cut you up real bad. So that's why you have to staple it this way. And again, use those binder clips. They're so helpful. They've been so helpful. And if you end up messing up, if your stapler doesn't quite line up on the crease, no worries. You can just use a staple remover and then try again. And it does help to adjust the length of your stapler so that all you have to do is just measure the first one and then just keep stapling along that same length. So there is my last staple. They're a little crooked, but that's all right. It'll work out. It still closes. Now, if the excess on the sides there kind of bothers you, that it's sticking out, if your pages are sticking out too much, then you can take a craft knife and a ruler and just kind of cut that excess off. I don't mind if my pages stick out of my cover because I'm going to be adding so many like little elements in my junk journal that I want them to peek out of my notebook just slightly, so I'm not going to trim those at all. And so next what I'm going to do is just go through every page and just crease it, make sure that it's got some movement, some budge. What is that called? I'm having a brain fart. All right, some wiggle room. What? How did I not know that word? Okay, and then I can start, once my notebook is complete, my little junk journal here, I can start grabbing things in my stash and just kind of putting them inside of the pages, on the pages that I think they would particularly go well with. And so they're just going to be there as like little placeholders, and I'm adding everything from like embellishments to pieces of ribbon to scraps to pieces left over from past projects, die cuts. Seriously, anything can go in here. If you have any receipts, if you have any pictures, any business cards that you'd like to add, that is super cool. I'm really excited to use up things in my stash that have been in my stash for such a long time. Some of these things I've had for years and I've just never got around to using them. And I just want to be able to use them because I feel so bad that they get left out of so many projects. So a junk journal is a great way to use those bits in your stash that you don't usually use, but also you feel bad for just leaving them behind. So just going again through every single page, just popping things down that I think would go well with that particular pattern of that particular page. And then I will move on and concentrate on one page at a time. So now it's time to start gluing down these elements, and I'm going to start off with the first 2 pages. And I don't have to commit to the things that I've put in here as placeholders, but I think they're a good starting off point. And I especially love frames like Polaroid frames or anything like a frame. You can even make your own frames if you have like a square die, as I showed in my last pocket letter tutorial with the spring themed pocket letter tutorial, which I'll have linked for you below, because it's so, I don't know, it's so easy for me to decorate a space with a frame in it. I don't know why, it just comes together so quickly. So this is an old stamp that I just stamped on a piece of white cardstock, and I love to use these little models. I use them quite a bit. They are from an old magazine stamp set that I have in my stash. Absolutely love them. And then I'm just going to add her to the frame and then add different ephemera all around. I'm going with sort of a peachy pink pastel kind of theme, like little beige, little black and white, little gold, pops of gold there. And I'm reaching for one of my favorite junk journaling tools, craft tools, which is my Tim Holtz tiny attacher, which gives you these little itty bitty mini staples. And they're so great because they're on the smallish side, so you can cover them up with if you staple something, you can cover it up with like a sticker, cover the staple with a sticker or another die cut or ephemera. And it's so easy, like, to layer things and then staple them with my tiny attacher so that I don't have to, sometimes you lose the layout of your little cluster that you're working on because you're lifting elements up to glue them down. But with the tiny attacher, you can just adhere that little embellishment cluster or whatever cluster you're working on and just staple it, and it's not going to budge, and then you can glue it down afterwards. So I started to jump onto another page and decorate it, and then I changed my mind because I wanted to finish at least one layout to show you just how easy it is and what you can do. And I do recommend that, I mean, you don't have to finish one junk journal in one night, in one sitting. What I recommend is that you make your junk journal and then you just leave it on your craft desk, on like next to you somewhere where you craft. Then that way, if you are working on another project and you have some leftover die cuts or leftover stickers or whatever it may be, maybe a piece of ribbon, you can then reach for your junk journal and find a page that you think it just work well with. I hope that makes sense, and that's just something that it'll be easy to keep up with, just having that junk journal accessible for you to grab it and just add little bits, especially if, let's say, you come home and you have some receipts or you went to a really good restaurant and you grabbed a business card. You can just open up a page and staple it in there. It doesn't even have to be glued down, really. And yeah, and then you can just build your junk journal that way, always keeping it accessible. Next, I'm adding some embellishments, so just wanting to add a little bit of interest, a little bit of texture to my layout. So I glued down a little MDF tag, and I also wanted to attach this epic embellishment. It's like an acrylic embellishment. I think they're from either Heidi Swap or Maggie Holmes. And so it's so easy. Again, it's so much fun, and so, I don't know, so simple for me to work with frames. And that's not just for creating layouts, but for tying things to it. So if you don't glue your frame down all the way so that you can just tie something around it, which is how I secured the epic embellishment onto the frame there with some embroidery floss, which is in this like peachy color. And I had this little bow that I made, kind of like a embroidery floss bow that I made, and so I was able to just, it kind of looks like a tassel almost, not really, but I was able to just tie that together to add that extra peachy color, some more peach color, and then also add that additional texture and just something else that's fun, another kind of element, a different type of element in my junk journal. I'm also adding some of this like vellum little like flourish, little leaf flourish, and this is from my favorite die set, which unfortunately has been discontinued. One of my favorite die sets from Poppy Crafts, and it was just a little simple like leaf sprig, and I love die cutting it from black, from vellum, from everything. It just looks so nice, and I love adding just that really subtle texture when you have a die cut that's cut from vellum. It's so soft, so feminine, and I was able to tuck some behind our little model friend there, and then I'm working on the inside of that little mini file folder that I added on that page there on the left. So I'm really happy with how the first 2 pages of my junk journal are coming together, and I felt like I wanted to add more. Of course, you can stop if you prefer a more clean and simple layout, but I really like to pack it pack it all on if possible, and so I'm going to be adding just a few more die cuts here and there. Next, I'm adding some gold sequins throughout my layouts, just 3, just a little subtle sparkle there. And I'm going to be attaching those, gluing those down with my Cosmic Shimmer Dries Clear Liquid Adhesive, which is my favorite adhesive of all time. It's the best. I love it. Here's a look at the next layout that I'm going to be working on, but you will see more of that in the next video, which is the DIY Traveler's Notebook Junk Journal Part 2. So we'll continue on decorating these pages, hopefully giving you lots of ideas and getting you inspired to try this project. It's so easy. And of course, there are more advanced ways, different ways to create your junk journal, but I really love making these Traveler's Notebook junk journals. Are really easy and they come together so quickly, so it's something that you can get started on tonight. So fun using up all of these scraps, all of these things in your stash that maybe you forgot about or you've been neglecting. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and let me know if you have ever made a junk journal. Maybe you have, it's something that you've been wanting to try. Would love to hear from you. Thanks again for watching, and if you want to follow more of my crafty projects, then you can head to my Instagram account, which is Janette Lane Blog, and let me know that you're coming from my YouTube channels, and then that way I can follow you back and we can be besties for life. All right, take good care. I'll see you soon. Bye.